Hello and welcome to the Vegas Apocalypse Quarantine Theater. So on today's Quarantine Theater, we're going to look at movies about plagues, movies about pandemics, epidemics, and things that we're experiencing right now. I got to tell you, if you decide you're going to go while you're in quarantine and you're just going to watch back-to-back movies about epidemics, you're going to be depressed. I got pretty depressed after just watching the first 2 or 3 movies. And of course, those were Rabid, the one with Marilyn Chambers. This epidemic comes from a medical mishap. And of course, when she hugs people, it causes a thing to pop out of her arm and it, gives them the rabies, basically. So, and there's not really a lot that we can identify with today on that. Although at some point they do come in and they see all the people laying down in the gutter and they pick them up and they throw them in the garbage trucks. Well, we haven't got that bad in it yet. Other movies that have dealt with epidemics, The Last Man on Earth, which featured Vincent Price. And this one was based on the book I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. And it's through that book that The Last Man on Earth and The Omega Man, and then the current one with Will Smith, all is based on that. And you have the scientists giving the warning, people ignore the warnings, and then hijinks ensue. And of course, the thing though that just keeps it from not being reputable for our purposes right now is that we're not dealing with a zombie creating virus. So we don't have to worry about, like Vincent Price did, shoving stakes down their heart and all that and trying to get rid of vampires that way. Although at the very beginning of The Last Man on Earth, we do see him as a scientist wondering if this airborne virus, which started from Europe, if it could ever be transported to the United States.
Take a look at this.
Is Europe's disease carried on the wind? Is it, Ben?
Could be.
And if it is?
It isn't, Verge.
Is that what you really think, or just what you'd like to think? Robert?
I cannot accept half-baked theories that sell newspapers. I'm a scientist, not an alarmist.
And he brushes it off, and of course, the sole penalty for brushing off anything in these science fiction movies is you get to live what you thought would never take place.
You're freaks. I'm a man. The last man.
There's the movie Outbreak with Dustin Hoffman. That one has a little bit more applicability to our situation, except they're trying to contain it all within one small town. And at some point, Donald Sutherland, the military honcho, decides that the only way to keep it from turning into an epidemic or into a pandemic is just to bomb this California town. And so that's when Dustin Hoffman has to go into his big speech to try to keep the people from bombing the California town. And with Contagion now, this one is a little bit more applicable. The virus in this one isn't some weirdo virus that's going to turn you into a vampire or a zombie. This one, unlike the virus we're dealing with now, coronavirus, which takes a while to get into you and it takes you a while before you start to feel the symptoms, this one on Contagion gets you like that. And for the most part, you're pretty much dead in a few hours. But I had saw that movie about, when it first came out, actually, which was back in 2011. For my money, the movie Contagion probably has more that's applicable to what we're going through right now. And what makes it very amazing is that it was made in 2011. And when you think about some of the defenses we hear of our administration, nobody ever thought anything like that would ever happen. Well, of course, just like in 9/11, then there were reports that bin Laden was planning an attack on the United States, but somehow or another that report got tossed to the wind. Obama was trying to tell the Trump administration about how they felt that pandemics were going to be an issue, to which, of course, he just wrote them off and got rid of the whole pandemic unit. And even if you don't want to go to the official sources, it's interesting that this particular movie managed to get it right. It did so 9 years prior to what we're having to deal with now. And of course, the way this is spread in the movie is exactly the way the coronavirus is spread today, by touching on cups.
The average person touches their face 3 to 5 times every waking minute. In between, we're touching doorknobs, water fountains, and each other.
Mom?
And as they're debating in the movie what to do, one of the characters, Dr. Ellis Sheever, played by Lawrence Fishburne, says,
"But right now, our best defense has been social distancing. No handshaking, staying home when you're sick, washing your hands frequently."
This is back in 2011 that this was coming out. So somebody knew that this is something that we may wind up be affected with at some point. And of course, as people do drop dead of this, the thing that gets me in this is that the one thing this movie didn't plan on or didn't work into was a megalomaniac leader of, oh, say, the United States of America, practically declaring war on the science classes. That doesn't happen in this movie. What does happen is budgetary restraints. Who's going to pay for this? So you do see arguments on that behalf being made. But they didn't factor in a sociopathic president, because they probably thought, what are the odds of something like that happening? But there's things that happen in this movie that we have not experienced yet. And that's why I make sure to have that yet at the end. Because when I see how the private industries and the government agencies are working together in Contagion, it's actually better than how we're working together, and they still have bodies piling up in the suburbs. Now, that hasn't happened yet. We do have some mass graves that are being dug off of New York, and that was, by the way, that was also in Contagion. You do see that happening in that movie. But we haven't seen them yet pile up on the suburbs, and that, of course, that's going to be dependent on us and how much leeway we're willing to give our leaders, how much trust we're willing to give them before we would allow it to get to that point. And so it's probably for things like that that I think that out of all these movies, like Rabid, The Last Man on Earth, Outbreak, the movie that you want to buy so that you can have it right here to reference is Contagion. But I have a feeling that the source material for that movie might have come from government documents. And there's an interesting character in there who's played by Jude Law.
One, there were 2 people, and then 4, and then 16. In 3 months, it's 1 billion. That's where we're headed.
And he's a very big blogger, and he's got millions and millions and millions of unique visitors going into his webpage every day. And he thinks that he has the cure for this disease. And he tries it on himself at home, and he's cured. Once Jude Law's character announces that it worked for him, people began to die after they take this drug, because just because a drug works well for one person, that doesn't mean it's going to work well for everybody else, and that's why it needs to be tested. So then he winds up getting arrested for manslaughter, and of course it's hard not to think of that when you think about our president, you know, basically endorsing certain types of drugs that he believes work and that may have worked on a couple people, but overall when you do the testing, people wind up dying. Except, again, in the movie, it made sense for it to be a blogger to be talking about this. In real life, for a president to be talking like a blogger, oh man, Contagion, you missed the boat on that one. So thank you for watching Quarantine Theater, and I'll see you next time with more disturbing recommendations.